Howard's tenure at Michigan started off pretty well, but my God, was last year a train wreck from, losing basically every game from December on. You won 2 against Ohio State and Wisconsin, but that's over. The drama's gone, and you bring in a guy in Dusty May who's been a great college basketball coach the last couple of years at Florida Atlantic, and just a great hire. So Christian and Greg here. Greg from Sleepers Media. Greg, thank you so much for coming here to talk Michigan. So I'm looking at this roster that Dusty May brought in, and there's things to be excited about, and I do have some questions. But generally, what is your kind of outlook on this team, and how has the Michigan fan base responded to Dusty May becoming the coach?
I think the fan base is very excited. I mean, I was very excited when he was hired. I think there's an argument to be made that outside of Cal going to Arkansas, I think Dusty May was the best coach on the board that was available to any school. And I certainly, of the coaches that were expected to hit the job market, to me, he was 1A long before I knew Michigan was even after him, given the trajectory of what he has done at Florida Atlantic. And I mean, those teams were good. Let's just call it what it was. Like he had 2 good years. I know March didn't go the way they wanted to this year, but he really assembled teams that I believe in what they were trying to do. And I believe in the talent level. And I think it maps to a bigger program for sure. So, Louisville wanted him. He chose Michigan over Louisville. To me, that was kind of a shocking decision, honestly. Like I thought when Louisville wanted Dusty May, we were going to lose our coach and have to find somebody else. So I'm very optimistic long term. I don't know if I'm as optimistic on this year's roster. Now, I also have been known to be a skeptic at times of my own programs, but the thing that scares me with this team is it's something that Dusty has not ever done before. And I want the Dusty that had a model that worked at FAU. I want him to take teams that play 4 guards and fly around and play exciting basketball and apply that into the Big Ten, because I think it'll be a matchup nightmare. Instead, he's come in and tried to basically put 2 centers on the floor together. I have no idea if that's going to work. I have no idea what it looks like in a Dusty May offense. I believe in the talent level of the best players on this team, but meshing them together and figuring out how to win games in the Big Ten, it could go a lot of different directions. They could be very good. They could be very bad. Neither one would really surprise me. But yeah, the upper end talent on the roster, I love. Some pretty large holes on the roster still too, though, if we're being honest.
Let's talk about the roster construction, because I agree. I was expecting more of a 4-guard lineup. I was expecting, whether it was Davis or Martin, I was expecting one of his guards to come with him. And I think Vlad Golden's fantastic. I think he could, he averaged 16 and 7 last year. I think he could definitely lead this team in scoring. And then Danny Wolf was obviously awesome at Yale. What was the trajectory of the roster construction? Who came first of those two, and why do you think he wants to go this twin tower route? I understand Danny Wolf could be a guy who's here for multiple years, but how did this happen? Why aren't there more guards, I guess, on this team?
Yeah, I think they thought they could get both of these guys and still get some good guards, and they did try to after the fact. The timing of these recruitments is kind of hard to pinpoint, to be honest with you, because they did a really good job keeping things under wraps, and then they kind of planned a PR drop of, hey, we're going to announce 4 commitments the same day, when in reality we don't know which one of those 4 came first. My interpretation of what happened here when he was ready to go to Michigan and he knew it was coming, I believe he did extend an invite to the big 3, to Vlad Golden, to Elijah Martin, and to John L. Davis. And depending on who you ask, I think Nick Boyd was in the mix to potentially join them. Outside of those 4, I don't think there were many that even really had the opportunity to come with Dusty to Michigan. And by all accounts, Vlad was in from the go. He's a grad transfer at this point. No questions asked. Here we go. I think Elijah, from what I've heard behind the scenes, Elijah and John L. were not super excited about playing another year together. Now, I don't think they had massive issues, but just kind of one of those things. Hey, we're done here. Let's go our separate ways. And I think there was smoke at the time John L. would follow Dusty to Michigan, so Elijah never truly considered it. John L. ultimately, I don't think if he wanted to go to Michigan would have been able to. From what I heard, he did not have his credits done at Florida Atlantic. He would have had to finish those, graduate in order to go, and that was just not on the table. And he ultimately got paid to go to Arkansas for Calipari anyway. I don't think anyone blames him for that. So it's weird though, man. I think it's one of those things when you know that Vlad Golden's in the fold, you also are hearing you can get Danny Wolf because Danny Wolf grew up a Michigan fan, and that recruitment was very unique. And I think it's one of those things where Wolf made it known pretty clearly from the jump after Dusty took the job, like, hey, I'll come here. If you want me, I will come here. And you can't turn that down, even if it is a little clunky. Like Danny Wolf is one of the best centers in the country. And Vlad's also a guy that's never played more than 25 minutes a game. So, you now feel great that you have 40 elite minutes of center play on this team. It's a bonus if Danny Wolf can just figure out 15 minutes next to Vlad at the 4 too. By the sounds of it, I think offensively it's going to work nicely because Danny Wolf's got a lot of guard stuff to his game, but defensively is where the massive concerns come in. I don't view Danny Wolf as a defensive stopper when he's guarding the fives in the Ivy League. I don't know what he's going to do guarding Big Ten fours, and it's something that I think every team in the league will have at least some way that they can exploit.
Right. It's going to be interesting, but it is a good point. Well, you're making the move to the Big Ten. You're not going to turn down the opportunity to have a good 7-footer on the floor at all times. Yeah. So you bring back Nimari Burnett, and then the starting backcourt, you're looking at Trey Donaldson and Roddy Gale. Obviously, funky having Roddy Gale come over from Ohio State, but he was a really good player there. I don't think they were very happy about losing him. And then Trey Donaldson was part of the Auburn system where sometimes the guards looked great. Other times they couldn't really create much, but he shot 41% from deep, a great defender. So do you think he only played 19 minutes a game. Do you think Trey Donaldson can take another step? And then Roddy Gale, I feel like, is going to be shouldering a lot of the load, right? How do you see them kind of playing off each other?
I'll answer from myself. It's not the correct answer by any means, not what I should be saying as the Michigan representative of this series. But no, I don't think Trey Donaldson can take another step. I'm a skeptic. As a fan, I am bummed that he got this role. Certainly there is a world where he becomes a good starting point guard. The Auburn guards in general, to me, if I were assembling a program, I wouldn't touch them based on what we saw last year. I mean, that was a top 5 team in the country that had one of the best front courts in the sport. The only reason anything ever went wrong for Auburn was because none of their guards were trustworthy at all. And I know Aiden Holloway's doing the Roddy Gale flip to a rival. I don't know how much he's going to play behind Mark Sears, and LeBaron Philon sounds really good. So, I think it's a risk worth taking. Yeah, sure. You bring in a guy that played 20 minutes. If he could be like a backup point guard, it's perfect. But the reality is Michigan just didn't land on some of their other big guard targets they went after Trey Donaldson. So he's going to be asked to do a lot. I think, from watching the film and scouting him a little bit and asking around on it, I think Auburn people would tell you the guy they wanted to play more was Trey Donaldson. And I struggle with it because I don't think Bruce Pearl's a bad coach. He's had a bunch of years of playing good guards 35 minutes when they deserve it. So it's hard for me to sit here and be like, well, Trey Donaldson's good enough. He just didn't get the opportunity when if you can't beat out these other very turnover prone, inefficient guards, something is wrong there. But at the same time, I believe he led the SEC in assist to turnover ratio. So there are some things to like on paper. To me, from what I have seen, he is just not nearly the dynamic threat that this team needs. I mean, they're going to have to play through Danny Wolf and utilize some of his off the dribble abilities. Roddy Gale, certainly a guy I believe in too. I do think there's a world where Roddy Gale just sort of becomes the do everything member of this backcourt. And then you surround Roddy with, just spot shooters around him. And I think that could work. Trey Donaldson shot 41% from 3. So if that's the role he ends up playing, I do think it can work. It's just one of those things. A good basketball team, to me, does not want Trey Donaldson playing more than 20 minutes a game.
It's interesting because, we led this with talking about the 4 guard stuff of FAU, and it's like if Roddy Gale is a dominant, if he's definitely the clear lead guard on this team, it's just not, I guess, what we've seen from these Dusty teams of the free flow of just the fun cutting and everyone just balance. It's like when people were trying to figure out FAU the year they went to the Final Four, it's like, who's the guy? It's like, well, yeah, the Janelle Davis guy and this guy Elijah Martin are pretty good, but it's kind of everyone. Like they're all good. Like, and I think that's just Dusty May, just his presence as a coach, the way he speaks, like that's the kind of team that he wants to have. So that is definitely the question of can Donald, if it's not Donaldson, then like who is it? Because we know who Nimari Burnett is. He's definitely a good, guy to have out there on the wing, but it's hard to imagine him just like really becoming a different guy than who he's been. And then you look at the bench, you bring in Reuben Jones, a tough guy from North Texas, has had a very successful career there. Not a very efficient player, shot under 40% from the field, but a very good three-point shooter. He's been a good three-point shooter his whole career. And then Sam Walters from Alabama, a guy that very sneaky. They just had so many guys, but he's one of those players that Nate Oates loves, who's 6'10" and can shoot. And I think if he could end up stepping into a big minutes role as a stretch four, and he's 6'10" too, so Michigan size won't be a problem. But how do you see Jones, Walters, Burnett? Any thoughts on those guys and their fits this year?
Yeah, I love Walters maybe the most out of this class of transfers that they got long term. Like, I think there's a world where a year from now, Vlad Golden's gone and you play Walters Wolf as your front court, and that's one of the best offensive front courts in college basketball. I just think Walters is a stud. The shot is for real. He's one of the best stretch four types there are. And I think between those three this year, like you're getting 80 great minutes from your front court. Maybe you sprinkle a little Will Cheddar in there, but Walters is a guy to me, like he could start right now and you would feel really good about him. So if he's the sixth man on this team, that's fantastic. I'm not a Nimari Burnett guy. I mean, I appreciate the contributions that he provided last year. And one thing I would say in general is almost everyone on this team, except for Roddy Gale, comes from places that have won a lot. Right? Like you bring Vlad Golden, who's been to a Final Four. Danny Wolf won an NCAA tournament game last year. Trey Donaldson was on a really good team. Nimari Burnett's played at Texas Tech and Alabama. Like almost all of these guys have experienced success. So it is optimistic when you're trying to start from scratch from the losingest team in college basketball last year. A lot of your new faces are like familiar with winning. And I think that will matter. Reuben Jones, from what I've been told, I was tipped off to Reuben Jones' commitment like maybe 2 weeks before it was announced. And what I was told at the time was that Dusty thinks this guy is a superstar. And he's just like, he locked in Reuben Jones before doing anything else after he took the Michigan job and kind of kept it under wraps. And, I can see why the more I dig into it. Like he kind of does project as one of those guys that just nobody talks about. And then all of a sudden you get 2 weeks into the season and it's like, oh, there's the answer in the backcourt that we didn't realize it. He's an all defensive guy, one of the best defenders in the country that shoots the lights out from three, is the leading assist guy on this team. Like he had averaged more assists per game last year than Trey Donaldson and Roddy Gale. And he's old and just solid. So he's one of those guys, like, I think he's going to play a lot more minutes than people expect. I'd be pretty surprised if Nimari Burnett starts over Reuben Jones, and maybe Nimari ends up taking Trey Donaldson's spot, but those two kind of do a minute split. But I don't know. The thing with this bench, man, as I'm talking through these guys, you really just need like two of them to hit, and you feel way better about this team. And I think between, you can even lump Donaldson into it. Lump Donaldson, Burnett, Reuben Jones. We haven't mentioned the freshman, Justin Pippen, was a really nice get, like quickly after Dusty took the job, just flip that on. Justin Pippen's looked pretty good in the film I've seen. And then Lorenzo Cason's a guy that nobody really knows about. State of Florida kid, was going to go play for FAU for Dusty. If he was going to Florida Atlantic, I think he may have started right away and just kind of taken over for John L. and Elijah. I would not be stunned if he beats out Trey Donaldson. This kid is tough. Anytime that he played one of the like 5 stars in Florida at the high school level, because he was a 3-star recruit, he punked them. Like you can go through game logs and find that this kid was putting 30 on the best recruits in the country's heads. He's just a winner and a really, really tough player. So like I said, you need basically 2 of a group of 6 to hit and be starter worthy. And I think you feel really good about the roster if that happens.
I love hearing stories of some of the, I'm not like a big high school, I don't follow like high school stuff very closely. So when I loosely listen to the rankings, but I like to go to the source. So then when I see a guy ranked 278 that you're excited about, like, that's pretty awesome to me. Is he a really good shooter too? Like I assume, if he was attracted to FAU as a Florida kid, like he saw the way Dusty's teams were playing, and we've talked about there's guard minutes up for grabs if Donaldson
Yeah.
is not ready to take a big jump, which it doesn't seem like you're anticipating. So
Yeah.
could Lorenzo be a guy that's playing big minutes and hitting threes and really makes an impact off the jump? And then there's a couple other freshman guards, a guy with an awesome name, Fat Brooks, and then Howard Isley Jr. Any of those guys going to factor in as well? But I want to hear more about Kaysen if that's your guy.
Yeah, it should be Case. And my Michigan hot take, bold prediction I've thrown out there is that I think he's the starting point guard on this team by the end of the season. I don't know how quickly it'll happen, but yeah, the scout on him, he's a bucket getter. He's like a tough scorer type. Now, I just immediately when I put on the film the day he committed to Michigan, I'm like, there's no way this kid's a 3-star. Like he just looks like a fringe 4-star, 5-star type to me. The only thing is, he's listed at 6'2". I think that's a little generous. He's more like a 6'1" guard to me, but yeah, he can shoot. I don't think he's like a pure knockdown spot shooter type, but a lot of his threes came off the dribble. He has a really, really awesome arsenal of like in between off balance floaters, finish through contact stuff. He gets to the rim and is not afraid of kind of going physical with a center that's walling him up. And he's just got like this kind of just edge to him, man. Like, for lack of a better word, like his handle, everything he does just has this like, I'm gonna kill you. Like I'm one-on-one and I'm out to eat you. And I think that's what this Michigan team really needs, because even Roddy Gale, he doesn't necessarily play with that type of tenacity to me. He's a really big stat stuffer that can do a little bit of everything, but he's been on a lot of just like, get my 20 and get out of here type games. I think they really do need someone with an edge. So it's Lorenzo for me is the guy to keep an eye on. Fat Brooks was a Juwan Howard commit that is a holdover. To be honest, I'm not expecting anything from him in a Michigan uniform. He was a state of Michigan kid that, it's a guy you take in state, but if he's in the rotation long term, I would be pretty stunned. I think Dusty needed to fill 13 spots and left the door open for Fat when that happened. Howard Isley Jr. is actually the son of an assistant coach that was on staff with Juwan, Howard Isley. And if there is one thing I really want to criticize that Dusty's done so far, he hasn't exactly reset the culture from the Juwan Howard era. I mean, Juwan's son is still on this team. Howard Isley Jr. was not on this team last year, and he's been extended an invitation to this team. Will Cheddar's like the captain of this team, and he was a Juwan guy. So it's one of these things, man. I was really hopeful as a fan. This was not just a bad basketball team. This was like a basketball program with a culture issue under Juwan, and they lost their strength coach because Jace Howard had an altercation with him in practice last year. The strength coach that developed Trey Burke and Nick Stauskas is leaving a program kind of upset about it because Juwan's kid fought him, and Juwan's kid is still on the team. So if there is one thing I really want to pointedly criticize Dusty for, I can't believe he hasn't course corrected that. It's almost like he stepped in with a reverence for all things Juwan Howard. And, I can understand why you do that. Obviously, Juwan means something to Michigan basketball, but it could be a really big mistake when we look back on this at the end of year one if things go south. I don't want to overlook the fact that there's a few too many Juwan Howard guys that are still kind of the heart of this team.
It's very interesting. I didn't even realize Jason on the roster until today, but I think those are some very astute points. And I don't know. I think the Big Ten adding some schools to the Big Ten, like it's going to be a gauntlet, and I think it might take with some of the concerns we brought up here. Like I think it might take some time, but I still think, as you said, like still a great hire. I think he will get his guys in here, and there's some intriguing pieces of guys that'll be able to come back in years to come. But I will say I do think Vlad Golden may be the best big man in the conference. I think Great Osabor, there are other really good post scorers, but I'm very high on Vlad, and I still think that another thing you mentioned, just a lot of guys coming from winning programs. I think Michigan will be in the mix, but it's hard to see everything coming together in year one. If you think that's fair.
Totally fair. Yeah, I think they're picked usually around 8th or 9th in the league in an 18-team league, and that feels right to me. I think there's going to be 9 teams that make the NCAA tournament. To me, Michigan feels like a bubble team that, the upside is probably a 5 or a 6 seed if all goes well. The downside is, a 500 team that clearly is not a tournament team. It'll come down to backcourt play because, like you said, Vlad Golden is one of the best centers in the league, if not the best center right away. Danny Wolf is going to be good at some point in the next 2 years alongside Vlad or not alongside Vlad. And Yeah, it's just can one of these point guards hit? If it hits right away, I think you love this team because even from going through the Big Ten, man, there are not many teams that you would sit here and say have like 3 top 25 players in this league. Michigan does. Like Roddy Gale, Danny Wolf, and Vlad Golden are that. And I think Indiana's the only other team that we can say that about. And Indiana's usually picked either first or second in the league. So if it goes well, the talent is there. But this will be a good, very early test for Dusty May on is this going to work or not.
Absolutely. Greg, thank you so much for your time. We'll be in touch as the season goes.
Of course. Thank you.